even in the shadow of the doorway, a kilometer from center stage, Kelsey Ahern very nearly glowed. He couldn't be any more awkward if he tried, as he lowered his hands and offered a shrug and a half-smile by way of greeting. "I thought I had the place to myself," she said, and flashed him her straight white teeth. She'd had braces for all of junior high and most of high school, and they'd been worth every minute. With a nod to the waste bin by Mr. Sullivan's desk, he shrugged again. Brilliant. He sounded like an imbecile, or rather, didn't sound like a well-read individual with an operational tongue. Kelsey nodded as though he'd managed to get out a full thought. "Just ignore me," she chirped as she slipped toward the metal cabinet at the back of the room. "Mike said he had some extra copies of The Count." After flinging open the double doors, she practically disappeared into the closet, rummaged around, and reappeared with a short stack of paperbacks. Waving the top one at him, she smiled. The Count of Monte Cristo. Sword fights and duels, lost treasure and prison escapes, betrayal and revenge. Levi had read it at least half a dozen times, and it only got better. Her class was in for a treat. She glanced down at the stack of books now tucked under her arm, her eyebrows pinching together. "I was going to have them read The Three Musketeers over the summer, but the 10th years will be studying Napoleon in their history class. It's the perfect tie-in, but I don't have enough books for everyone in my class, and I'm having to change all my lesson plans, but I think it's worth it. Do you think so?" She looked up, hope in her eyes. Levi blinked at her, not sure if she was looking for confirmation or for someone to tell her to go back to her original plan. He wanted to tell her he thought it was a great idea, that he'd read a biography of Napoleon after reading The Count the first time, when he was just a few years older than her students would be when they started back to school in September. He wanted to tell her that she couldn't go wrong, that all she had to do was show her students she cared about them. He wanted to tell her that her smile lit the hallways, long after the students went home for the day, that he looked forward to seeing her, hoped every evening that he'd stumble upon her singing to herself in the drama room. But since he'd managed to say exactly 5 words to her since the start of the school year 9 months before, he settled for lifting a single shoulder and picking up the trash can he'd come to empty. "I'm sorry." She shook her head, but didn't make a move toward the door. "I'm sure you have better things to think about than my lesson plans. It's just that I doubt Mrs. Davis ever second-guessed herself when we were in school. I don't want to fail these kids. I mean, do the wrong thing for them. Not that I want any of them to fail my class, either." Her cheeks turned a pretty shade of pink as she scratched at the little mole on the edge of her left cheek, and she rolled her eyes, likely at herself. I know. I'm sure it's just second-year jitters." She readjusted the books in her arms, her shoulders rising and falling like she was letting out a deep breath. But the sound of her sigh was drowned out by a rush of wind that shrieked past the building. Windows rattled, and the floor shook. In that instant, rain hammered against the roof, angry and sullen. Kelsey's eyes flashed wide, and she hugged her books to her chest. "I guess maybe the weather girl was right," she whispered, as though raising her voice might incite the wind again. "Should have gone home early today." Levi nodded, tearing his gaze from her and watching the torrents against the windows. The sky had been merely gray only a few minutes before. Now it was black, sinister. He couldn't see to the parking lot beyond. He couldn't even see to the trees he'd planted a few meters from the building 3 years ago. A gust rattled the windows again, like the storm wanted to be inside, too. His gut twisted. He took 3 cautious steps backward. Kelsey let out a little peep, a sound of uncertainty mingled with something like fear. But when he turned to look at her, she was wrestling her features into something that he called teacher face. No nonsense, in charge, unflappable. Every teacher at the school had one. Hers just happened to make his skin tingle and his breath catch. "Well,